of boats in the water today. Anyways, he told me, he asked me, I'll never forget. I was between 12 and 14. I believe I was 14. But he asked me, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? What's my career path? And I told him, well, I want to be a cameraman. I had interest in cameras. And I was a decent photographer. My dad, he said, you know, he thought about it. And he said, there's too many changes happening with cameras. You should probably go with sound. And, you know, that's all he had to say. Just from that day forward, I was like, well, I'm going to be a sound engineer. See how malleable I was at that time. Look at this. A river warboat. Anyways, that stuck in my head. And by the time I was 15, I was working at a place called Meredith Video. And I was doing film to tape conversions, 8mm, you know, the telecine kind of thing, and I was making those, and I was making standard conversions between, you know, NTSC was the standard of America, and we had a lot of foreign clients. So their tapes were like C-Cam or PAL-M, and you know, I would make the conversion. So all that kind of stuff, you know, it's all very similar to me. And at that time, the technology was very similar because we captured everything in an analog fashion using magnetic tape. And all that required a lot of knowledge that is completely useless now. I mean, not needed at all. But it is a fundamental of how things work today. Anyways, I worked in Meredith Video. And I started going to a school. I left high school 1 year early because I had enough credits by taking the GED in 11th grade. So 12th grade, I just showed up on the first day for photo day, and that was it. I did not spend any time in high school. I went to a school called Soundmaster. And Soundmaster, it's kind of like, you've heard of DeVry. It's one of these kind of schools. It was really, really intense as far as what they taught you, how fast they taught you. They had a full-blown 24-track recording studio. And, you know, by the time I was done there, which it took about a year and a half, or just under 2 years, I had an accredited degree in sound engineering, and I had enough knowledge to go make a resume and pass it out everywhere. And I did that. The very next day after graduating, I, you know, went to a print shop, or actually, I typed up on a typewriter my resume, took it to a print shop where I had it, you know, I don't know, a few hundred copies made. And then I rode around on my scooter everywhere in Burbank and Hollywood and North Hollywood, everywhere that looked like they might do some sort of recording. Whatever that might be, I went. And the day after that, I got a call back. But I went everywhere. I mean, I went to Hollywood, I went to Warner Brothers, where my dad worked. I went to Capitol Records, everywhere. EMI America. But the very next day, I get a call back from Evergreen Studios, which is in Burbank, really close to the border of North Hollywood. And Evergreen was a scoring facility. They had 2 really nice scoring stages. And turns out that was one of the most, used scoring stages in Hollywood. And I was 16, maybe 17. So it was quite the experience. So before I go on with the story, I'm walking from Old Town Belgrade, which is behind me here. So I gotta come back here at night, because at night it looks really nice with all the lights lit up. But I'm heading towards New Belgrade. New Belgrade was completely a design city, designed in the 60s. The streets are really huge. You can land an aircraft on the streets here. But it's got a very 60s kind of Eastern Bloc feel over here. But it's much cheaper to live. It's like half the price for rent. Anyways, get back to my story here. So I know more about my story than I do about where I'm walking to. Anyways, I got the job at Evergreen. Evergreen hired me. And, my job there was to set up for orchestras. So I would be the assistant to, the engineer. There was the mixer, the recordist, and then there was me. And I was the guy who I ran all the microphone cables. I placed all the microphones, the string section, the brass, I hooked up all the MIDI stuff. I did the alignments on the 24-track tape machine. I wrote up the console. I put the tape on the console where I wrote up all the inputs. And that job, it came so easy. Boom, I just had it. And the job was really difficult. I'd already worked a lot. At that time in my life, I'd already put in quite a few hours doing, various jobs. I'd already worked at West Coast Theater Supply as well, which I kind of forgot to mention. So I was already trying to work in the industry, the entertainment industry. And I started working at Evergreen, and they expected you to work a lot, literally from 10 a.m. until 2 a.m. 6 days a week, that kind of thing. It was also my first experience with, I guess what you would say is the evil about Hollywood. They owned the bar next door. The bar next door was called Des Reagan's. It was actually owned by or as far as I know. Maybe that's not true. And by the way, Evergreen was owned by, 3 people: Charlie Fox, Artie Butler, and Gail Levant. Gail was the president of the Harp Society. She was a harp player. Charlie Fox, he was a songwriter. He wrote things like Love Boat, and I think he wrote the Happy Days song, the Laverne Shirley song, things like that. These people were really good at what they did. And they were big movers and shakers. But they weren't big on paying much. I was making minimum wage, which at the moment I don't remember what that was. It might have been $5.25, something like that, an hour. Maybe they paid me a little more than minimum wage, just because it was a very high responsibility job. And people yelled at you. I mean, they yelled, you know. They called me vegetable and in front of everybody. I mean, you had to have a really thick skin. You learn this pretty quick. Anyways, upon the time I got my first paycheck, they said, yeah, go next door to Des Reagan's. Pick up your package. And I'm like, huh? So I go over there. And the bartender, he slides... and by the way, I'm watching the sound mixer, you know, drink whatever he's drinking, scotch or something, at the bar. And it's like maybe, I don't know, 11 a.m. And the bartender, he slides a package over towards me. And I just take it and I put it in my pocket. Like, I'm kind of figured I knew that this was something illicit, but I didn't want to just be obvious about it. So I took my package and I ran. Well, when I opened it later, I find out, oh, there's a lot of white powder in this package. This is part of my paycheck, I find out. And they give you that so that way you can work till 2 a.m. Now, when you're 17 years old, honestly, you don't need that. In fact, it will drive you crazy. So in some ways, I'm kind of glad that happened to me because, you know, the white powdery stuff was just never something I was really big on. Smoking weed, on the other hand, yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles and Hollywood. That was our thing. So look at this. This is actually a skate park. And these are wood ramps. I see one over there that's been caught on fire, looks like. Yeah, they wouldn't, like in America, this would be in someone's backyard, but you know what? They wouldn't have it like this because somebody get hurt. Oh, I'd like to skate it though. I'd probably get hurt. Anyways, that's what happened with Hollywood. That's how I found out where I was. And it was like boot camp. Boot camp will get you ready for and desensitize you for what's to come next. Well, year after working there, and I worked there for, I think I worked there a little over a year, but one day I was working and I get a call from the office at Evergreen. They said, yeah, you should go over and have a little chat with the people in the operations office. They want to tell you something. So I go over there and they said, yeah, we just got a call from Capitol Records and they were looking for you. I was like, really? Yeah, they said you need to call them. So I did. You know, I think we're just gonna go back because I can go walk across the river some. No, we'll do that another day. We're just gonna walk back. I think we're gonna go maybe towards Capitol building. Anyways, I get a call from Capitol Records, and I called them, you know, and they said, we got your resume, and we would like to have you come in for an interview. Now, I dropped my resume off at Capitol Records 1 year prior, the day after graduating from Soundmaster, and 1 year prior to me starting at Evergreen. And they held on to my resume. So that right there, that was amazing. I mean, I don't know if that still happens, but that was amazing. So I go to Capitol Records, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Capitol Tower. It looks like a stack of 45 RPM records. And at the very top floor, there's a conference room. And I was asked to go to that conference room, and after I went to that conference room, I was told to go over to EMI America, which was across the street from Hollywood High, on the corner of Sunset and Orange. So I go there, and I meet with their lead engineer, and I meet with their mastering engineer. The lead guy, his name was JB, Jim Bauerlein. He was the head engineer. And then there was Ron McMaster. He was the mastering engineer. Which, you know, what a great name. And Ron, he was a disc mastering engineer. He made lacquer and vinyl masters. And then as we got into CDs, he made the CD master as well. So I look at this room, and the title of the position was production engineer. And at the time, the job was basically to make lots of tape transfers, reel to reel, you know, 1/4 inch, 2-track, running at 15 IPS, inches per second, and with Dolby A encoded, and later SR. That was very typical. Or 1/2 inch, 2-track, running at 30 IPS, non-Dolby. These were typical tape masters that I would play back, so I'd have to do a playback alignment. And then I would record, so I would run through a mixer, and I would either record on some other tape format or cassette. That was the primary purpose for the job. But the equipment they had in there was ancient. I mean ancient. It looked like Frankenstein's lab. They had Scully tape machines from the 60s. And granted, this is the 80s. In fact, this is the late 80s. So, yeah, this stuff was old. At the time, though, the tape machine of choice was the Ampex ATR 102. It still is. It's still my favorite tape machine. It's great for editing. And back then, you know, cut and paste, it was really, you had to cut with a razor blade and paste with tape. That's where that term comes from. Anyways, I see all this old equipment, and I mean, it was overwhelming, because I mean, I didn't train on anything that looked like that stuff. So when I was back at Capitol Records, and I was in that big conference room, and I forget the man's name. I want to say his last name was Smith, but I don't remember. And he asked me, "So, do you feel you could do this job?" And I told him, "Look, I've never seen any of this equipment. I don't know the signal flow in the room, but I could tell you that after 1 week, I can guarantee you I would know what I'm doing. But I need a little bit of time in the room." Well, he said, "Wow, you're the first person that has been honest like that. Everyone else has just said that they could do it. And how is it that, you know, you can't?" Okay, so are we gonna go down here? We could go down here. This is a very nice park. This park runs all the way around the river. There's a nice bike path. But no, we're gonna go back. It's not so interesting. Not at the moment. I'll like to do that at nighttime. Anyways, yeah, they complimented me on my honesty, and I was hired. I got the job. So that happened real naturally, real easily. I didn't have to struggle for that to happen. Of course I had to put in effort, but I didn't struggle. It was like it was meant to happen. Well, I worked there for 3 years, something like that, 2 years, and I made the master tape. I made the transfer of the master tape for the tape that actually was the master to the CD, which back in those days it took an entire room full of equipment to make a CD. And you have to understand, it was the bleeding edge of technology. Using old technology, using digital pneumatic tapes, where on the analog tracks would have the PCM code and the time code. PCM code is what told the disc player to go to the next track and such. And the digital portion of the tape is where the digital audio was laid down. That was the evolution of how CDs were made. And I got to do amazing stuff. Like I did the first 3 Red Hot Chili Pepper albums. True Men Don't Kill Coyotes, Freaky Styley, and the Uplift Mofo Party Plan. By the way, this is the Danube. It's a major thoroughfare here. I got to make a lot of old, CD masters from old music too, like Fats Domino and Don McLean and Tina Turner. I mean, just lots and lots of stuff. I made radio spots. I mean, some of these things I did so many. I made so many recordings that I'll never forget.